Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. And in this update, we are going to check out GALA's price chart. And every now and then, I think I should talk about the long-term scenario and tell you what is going on overall in my mind in the mid to long term, and then talk about what is happening specifically in the short term. And guess what? This is going to be another one of those videos. So in the mid to long term, if you really want to be an absolute moonboy in GALA, well, okay, I guess this is the scenario to show to people. I think in this bull run back in 2021, 2022, we had a beautiful three-wave move on the upside, potentially in form of an A, B, C zigzag. Followed by that, I think to about the lows, we can consider maybe having a WXY in form of a double zigzag, possibly even an ABC zigzag, generally some sort of a correction. And then you can say, well, okay, after our correction is over, we can have yet another move on the upside. And since in this phase up in GALA, most likely we got an ABC. Well, we should probably say the next phase up in GALA, the next big move on the upside, is also going to be in form of an ABC, completing the subwaves for, you know it if you are a regular viewer of the channel, a WXY in form of a double zigzag. And again, this is like the absolute moonboy scenario, and in it, you should probably say that in GALA, we are going to have this specific phase up into our A leg by the end of this cycle, which in it, there's even like a chance that we're going to take the highest high in here for the first target, about 87 cents. Maybe even we are going to go to $8. But in my view, we are probably not going to do that. But let's just talk about the moonboy scenario. Followed by that, in the next bear market, you are going to get most likely a B wave, and then in the next bull run, who knows, maybe in 2030, 2029, you are going to witness yet another great move on the upside. Now, here's the deal. In GALA, are we going to go up and set an all-time high? Well, you know it, there's always a chance, but I promise you this isn't really my base case. Why? Because the total supply of GALA, I think, is about 50 billion token. And that means if you want to reach to about $8, your market cap is going to be about essentially $50 billion, meaning what? Yep, you are going to crack the top 10. Can this happen? Of course, there's always a chance it can happen. But again, I told you it's not really my base case, and you don't really need to be an absolute moonboy to make some money in GALA. I think even if you consider a decent move on the upside, hopefully by the end of this cycle, in order to take the highs in here about, let's say, 8.5 cents and reach to about, I think 10 cents is like a very reasonable target. Well, that's essentially about a 10x move on the upside, and from my POV, that is like plenty enough. So overall, I am very much optimistic in GALA. Do not let anybody tell you otherwise. Now, having said all that, let's go on some lower time frames now and see what is going on in the short term. And if you remember the last time that we talked about GALA, we were right around this area, and the idea was that, well, okay, odds are we are having 5 down in here, and I want to see a correction up, followed by yet another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave on the downside, and then a rather strong move on the upside. And that, I'm gonna say, pretty much played out. And if I just go on maybe 15-minute chart, you can see the candles a bit better. So let's zoom in more. There we go. This was absolutely our 5 wave down, followed by a correction up to about this point into our wave B, and then this is one, this is our wave 2, another move down into wave 3, correction for 4, and another move on the downside into our wave 5, completing the subwaves for a beautiful zigzag destruction. Also, off of the lows, I think we are having a 5 wave up. So I'm gonna say hopefully in GALA we have completed the subwaves in here for a 1, 2, maybe to about this point of wave 3, correction for 4. Actually, I'm going to tell you in a bit why I think we are not having a correction to about here. Odds are our correction actually ended right in here, and then another move up into our wave 5. Now, let's go around here. You see, if you want to argue that in any chart we have hit our final low, then okay, off of the lowest low in that chart, you have to be able to find, you know what, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This specific count is called an impulse. Rules for it are, we should not have overlapping of the waves between our wave 2 and 4, and in any kind of 5 wave, our wave 3 right in here should not be the smallest wave. And in terms of the subwaves, you know it, 5 wave up into wave 1, 3, and 5. There we go. Excuse me. And for our corrections for wave 2 and 4, we can have different patterns. Let's say ABC into wave 2, and let's say this time an A, B, C, D, E, a triangular structure into our wave 4. Now, let's go on the live chart. Okay, so since I think we might be able to identify a 5 wave up of the lows, well, okay, this can definitely be an optimistic sign suggesting the bottom is in. And by the way, now let's talk about it. For our wave 4, since in here, from this point to about the highs, I'm not really able to find a 5 wave for our wave 5. I'm going to argue, you know what, we probably had in this area from this point like an A, B probably to about this point, ABC down into C, ABC up into D, and another move down into our E leg. Essentially, this is a triangle to about this specific point into our wave 4. And yep, I am absolutely able to find a 5 wave in this phase up into our wave 5. Now, question for you. What happens after a 5 wave up, even if you want to go according to the most bullish scenario on any chart? You know it. Even according to the most bullish case, we are going to end up having one way or the other a move on the downside, but that move has to be in form of a correction structure. And I am really hoping that in GALA, we are going to end up having a correction in here. But right now, I really cannot tell you anything for sure. Question: what needs to happen in order for me to talk bullish with a bit more confidence? You know it. I need to see from the current area, hopefully, a rather strong bounce, and by that I'm talking about a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 without a lot of overlapping of the waves in order to take this important high right in here for the first target about, let's say, 1 cent area. Now, question is, why is this high so important for me? Because number one, let's go around here. You see, in terms of the classic trends, in a downtrend, you are essentially having a series of lower highs and lower lows. And when you end up getting a move on the upside, in order to take the previous major pivot high in here, you can argue, yeah, you know what, maybe our downtrend has come to an end. And in GALA, that previous major pivot high, I do think it actually translates to this one right in here about the 1 cent area. Now, there's also another very important reason, and maybe for that matter, like a much more important reason for why I think taking this high would be like a really, really bullish sign. You see, on the opposite, if you want to say that we're going to have our final top around here, then okay, you have to be able to find a 5 wave on the downside. And if you are going to have overlapping of the waves between your wave 2 and 4, well, okay, you're not going to have an impulse, and that narrows your option to either an expanding leading diag or maybe a leading diagonal in form of a wedge. We are going to talk about both of them. First things first, let's talk about a leading diagonal in form of a wedge, which in it, wave 1 is actually the biggest wave. Correction for wave 2, another move down into wave 3, it has to be a smaller than 1. Correction for 4, again, unlike an impulse, in here we have to have overlapping of the waves, and also wave 4 has to be smaller than wave 2, and this is our final move down into wave 5, which has to be the smallest wave. On the other hand, an expanding leading diag is pretty much the opposite of this thing, meaning for our wave 1, we're going to have essentially the smallest wave, correction for 2, bigger move down into our wave 3 relative to 1, correction for 4, it has to be bigger than wave 2, and also again we must have in here still overlapping of the waves, and this is our final move down into our wave 5. Now let's go on the live chart and zoom in more. There we go. So let's assume that in GALA we are going to get, hopefully from here or a bit lower, a move on the upside in order to take this side. At that point, if you want to go according to like a really, really bearish scenario, answer me this. How exactly are you able to find in this region a 5 wave? Your best shot at finding a 5 wave is going to be if you say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, you know what? Fair enough. Let's put the chart on regular scale and then let's start measuring waves. And I think it's actually best to start measuring our corrections and see, is wave 4 bigger than wave 2 or not? Let's just measure the length of our wave 2. As you can see, our wave 2 actually by like a very decent margin is quite a bit bigger than our wave 4. In other words, this is narrowing your option to only and only having a leading diagonal in form of a wedge structure, which in it wave 1 must be the biggest wave. Okay, remember that. Let's just measure our wave 1 from this point to about the lows and compare it to our wave 3. As you can see, wave 1 is not even bigger than our wave 3. So essentially, I'm trying to tell you, if in Gala we manage to have hopefully a good move up in order to take this high, at that point, since there's going to be like a very limited chance that we're going to be able to find a 5 wave in here, we have to pretty much argue, yeah, you know what, according to our primary scenario, we are dealing with a correction structure, and overall this is actually a great bullish setup because it indicates that on a higher degree, let's go on 30-minute chart, there we go, we are having 5 wave up, hopefully into a wave 1, correction for wave 2, and what's next? Yep, you know it, a rather great move on the upside into wave 3, 4, 5. So all you want to see in the next week or two is just maybe like a little bit more consolidation, followed by another move on the upside in order to take this important high, and that could really be a very strong bullish sign for us. And I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in Gala's price chart. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time. Goodbye.